Family definitely has its challenges, especially when you throw in littles, but I have figured out a few different little things, and although I think there is no one on earth that has figured out how to keep a toddler happy at all times, I'd like to share some tips with you today. So it can be pretty discouraging when you spend all day making a meal to nourish your family and to make them happy, put little smiles on their face and fill their bellies, and then they say they don't like it before they even actually try a bite. So I've experienced that more than once, and it began a bit of a quest on this little motherhood journey for me to find things that my kids would like without me really having to adapt a meal excessively or completely make other meals, because one, I don't think that's the best practice all the time when your kids are going to be eating other places. You want to help develop their little palates so that they do like a lot and they don't become these picky kids. But I do understand that sometimes, whether, a missed nap or it's been a rough day or everybody's just off, sometimes you got to make a peanut butter and jelly. I don't think that's wrong, but we're certainly not doing that every meal. So I've tried to figure out what the common thread is between the different meals that I make that my kids actually do like. And one of those seems to be a carb, which really makes total sense because I think we all can agree that we like carbohydrates in many forms. But having that type of component, whether it be mashed potatoes or rice or a pasta, in the majority of my meals has really helped me have at least one thing that I know they are going to eat and that will help sustain them until the next meal, even if they're not a big fan of what I've made. So that is another reason you will see me pretty much always serving bread or rice or like a potato with our meals, because it's just the way we can get some food in their bellies. Now, we always try to make at least our oldest and our second oldest at least try a little bit of what is in front of them, because a lot of times the kids can just be scared about what they see on their plate before they even try it. So a lot of times they actually do enjoy the meal, and that has helped them realize that, okay, maybe we should at least give it a try. So today is an example of one of those meals. I am doing a Mexican dish. I have some ground pork in there, some peppers, onions, and I'm adding cumin, smoked paprika, chili powder, all of those Mexican flavors that I grew up with, and I was just kind of craving some of that. So that's what we're doing today. I added some onion powder and salt and just bringing all those flavors together, sauteing up those onions and peppers, and I'm adding some white beans that we had cooked last week or so, and so just need to use those up. And as you'll see, I just am always trying to use up what is already in the refrigerator. I don't do a ton of meal planning. It's just been kind of a busy time, and I found that in this phase of life, it's been a little bit easier to just go ahead and make sure I have plenty of ingredients on hand that we're used to using, and then use my creativity and allow that to come out in my dishes and what I'm using to put into these meals. So I made some Mexican rice. And the way I make my Mexican rice is just basically to saute my rice kernels, not rice kernels probably, just whatever, saute my rice, my dry rice, in my Instant Pot. And I'll go ahead and add a small can of tomato sauce, and then all of the same spices, my cumin, smoked paprika, chili powder, and then some salt and pepper. Sometimes I will add like some diced peppers, any kind of or diced chili, that's what I mean to say, and some cilantro, and then I will add chicken broth if I have it, and then I let that just cook on the rice setting, and it comes out delicious. I like a little bit more of a not chewy rice, but like not the light fluffy rice when it's Mexican rice like that. So you'll kind of see I was able to like spread it and just do some different layers with those tortillas and top it with cheese. And the kids did actually eat this because one, it was coated with cheese, and two, because there was that rice component. So it was something they were familiar with. They did need to be topped into it a little bit, but we also served it with some chips, which they love. So they were willing to give it a try and didn't hate it. So that's a success for us. So today we're just keeping it basic with some hamburgers and sweet potatoes, and then I'm going to dress it with a salad. But I have learned that with these types of meals, I will try to keep things as separate as possible. I'm going to make a dressing that I'll use on my salad and my hamburger actually, which ended up delicious, but I knew better than to even try to put that on the bread for the kids. So I'm always offering it as an option and just having them try just a little bit of it, just to see if they would enjoy it, even if they don't want it, just to get them to try the flavors and to always kind of be positive about it if I can, and just like, hey guys, why don't you try this? I think it's delicious. And instead of like, oh, try this, if you don't like it, it's okay, but let's try it and all that kind of stuff. I just kind of try to keep it as lighthearted as possible. It's like, okay, it's fine if you don't like it, that's fine, but they're going to eat the basic part of the meal. So you're adding sauces or options like that they might like but may not like, but you're not like forcing that upon them. It's like, I'm just trying to get them to eat, not necessarily give them a refined palate. Now, with salad season coming upon us, I did want to mention that I have been successful in getting my kids to eat salad before by laying the ingredients out and letting them dress the salad themselves. A lot of times they don't want any kind of dressing, at least my oldest doesn't, and they want to pick the things out. It just like makes them feel older, and it's exciting because I don't usually let them just do all of their plates. So we will put the ingredients out. They add what they want to their plate. I kind of encourage different things. It's like, oh, you might want to try this, or just try one or two. And I usually will offer some different fruits that they like. For instance, on this one, I was able to use some apples we had. So I'll just dice those up. So then I at least know they're getting kind of a fresh component that they will enjoy. And they do like carrots and stuff like that. So they're not, of course, onion children. They don't like that. But, I throw it on there because we enjoy it, and they just might as well get used to picking some stuff off here and there. As I'm saying that, I did not separate the ingredients this time. We were just trying to throw something together because we wanted to be outside. It was beautiful this day, so we wanted to eat outside, and I was just throwing everything in the pot. I wasn't going to do a bunch of extra, so it's okay to do that too. And I just let them pick off what they didn't want, and they ate what they did want. So I just usually make my hamburgers with a little bit of coconut aminos and salt, pepper, Worcestershire, and some onion powder, and then garlic powder if I had it. I did not this day, so it always turns out really good, really flavorful. The beef flavor still shines through, and like I said, I made that dressing, which, I wish I had had enough avocado oil because I had to use olive oil for the majority of this. And if you've never used olive oil to make mayo, you may not know that you still definitely taste the olive oil. So I had to kind of work to cover that up a bit to make this mayo, because that's really just all I do for like a creamy dressing, is you make a mayo and then add the different flavors that you want to that. So I was going for like a honey mustard, and then when I tasted that olive oil, I was like, it's still pretty strong. So I added some some balsamic vinegar to it, and it was delicious. Like it really made a comeback. It was surprisingly good. So I definitely will be doing that again. And I also added some basil. So just don't be afraid to mess around with it. You know, I felt like I had kind of ruined it when I started out, and then I just kept developing the flavors and throwing some random things in, and it ended up really good because we were not wasting that much oil. We were going to use it. So like I said, I liked it so much I used it on my burgers and on my salad. So we have not had that many sweets lately. We have just been kind of craving some sweets because I just don't usually take the time to make desserts. And I don't like using a bunch of butter because it's expensive. So we try to kind of use it sparingly, but we were due for some desserts. So I decided to do a cinnamon roll. Some cinnamon rolls, and I started the dough the day before. I'll link the recipe. It was so good, and I for some reason always feel like this is an ordeal, that cinnamon rolls are a big thing, and they're honestly not at all. If you can remember to just get the ingredients started the night before in your mixer, if you have a stand mixer, it's incredibly simple because you're just throwing that dough together and then letting it set. And then the next day, you add in a couple more ingredients and then do that cinnamon sugar blend. And I actually decided to keep it even more simple by not doing any kind of icing on the top. My family was actually totally good with that. My husband prefers it without the sauce, and I actually kind of do too. Like they're good enough on their own. They do not need it. So if that's holding you back, because hey, some small things like that really can just seem like too much. So if you just can throw those in there, if you can manage that, then you can have some cinnamon rolls, and they were so good. So I was just doing that while I was getting dinner ready, so that those would kind of be our dessert for the evening, rather than something in the morning. We would have plenty left over for a few breakfasts after this. So I'm just getting my burgers in the other cast iron. I'm so glad I ended up getting more than one cast iron. So I just did those sweet potatoes in the oven. I hadn't done that before with sweet potatoes, and a few, probably 20 minutes in, I realized I was smelling them. So I opened it up and it was starting to leak out. I don't know another way to say that, but so I put a baking sheet under them, and it's saved the majority of my oven. So make sure you put a dish under those if you're going to do it that way, just on the rack like that. So you'll see I just put a little bit of that dressing on there, a pat of butter on my sweet potato, which, wow, I could eat sweet potatoes without anything at all on them. But this made for a fairly light and easy meal that we definitely enjoyed while outside. And surprisingly enough, at least for me, my kids don't love sweet potatoes, but we did have the buns, and they like hamburger, so they did still have something they liked, and I am not above a little bit of bribery. And they were willing to eat for that cinnamon roll. We are seeing so many signs of spring right now, and it is making me so excited. And so we've been getting outside even more, and this next day was actually pretty warm outside. It was surprisingly warm. So I really wanted to get outside and not really have to worry about being in the kitchen all evening. So I decided to do a beef stroganoff type meal. I wanted to do some sourdough noodles because if you didn't know this, literally every kid loves noodles. I have not found a kid that didn't like noodles. If you have that kid, then I am so sorry because I don't know what to tell you. But all the kids I know love some noodles. So I was making sure to get noodles this time, and we didn't have any noodles that I wanted to use, like an egg noodle or anything like that. So noodles are actually one of those things you can throw together fairly quickly, believe it or not. It sounds super complicated, but it's not. And so I'm just searing this meat here, just kind of getting some flavors to develop, and then I'm going to bake it in a sauce. So I'm getting these noodles sarned, and there's a little bit of time for them to ferment, so I'm just getting those ingredients all combined. I didn't actually go by a recipe this time, but I will put one in the description that I've used in the past. I pretty much just look for the consistency that I want. I'm using some wheat flour as well, so it just kind of changes things. So it was a little sticky, so I just kept adding some flour. You can, of course, make delicious noodles if you're willing to follow a recipe, but I wasn't this day, and that's why I forgot the salt and had to add that and fold it in. But you know what, they were totally fine, and I ended up cutting them too thick as well, but it just kind of made them more chewy and delicious, so we weren't complaining. So I'm just starting like a little bit of a roux with the butter and some wheat flour. And I don't have any beef broth, so I am just using chicken broth and the drippings that were in the pan left over. There weren't many, but we are going to add some beefy flavor. And how I do that is to add Worcestershire sauce in it. To me, that just kind of gives it a beefy vibe. So that is what we did today. I'm going to add in some onions and some fresh garlic and some mushrooms to our sauce. So I'm just throwing the noodles in there in the fridge so that they can cool. They're a little easier to roll out when they're cool. So I'm just adding in this garlic and onion, just adding all those flavors that's where all your flavor's coming from. So everything will bubble in the oven and taste delicious later. So this is something that I was able to throw together at nap time. And like I say, I've got those noodles, so I know the kids will at least eat the noodles, which they actually did really well with this meal. I was afraid the mushrooms would kind of throw them off because a lot of times they don't like if I keep the mushrooms big. But they were willing to try the majority of this because it looked creamy and it had that noodle bringing them in. So I went ahead and added some herbes de Provence and some onion powder, pepper, salt, and then you saw the Worcestershire. So that ended up being perfect. And I added a little extra broth than I would if I were trying to just make a sauce, because we need to cook that meat in the sauce, and I wanted plenty of sauce to be able to thicken it later for the noodles. So this is a little bit later on. We've been outside and I needed to come in and get these noodles cooked so that I could throw them in the stroganoff once it is ready. And by the way, if you know an authentic stroganoff, and this is not probably stroganoff at all, but just don't hate on me. You know what I mean. It's just beef and noodles, basically what we're doing. And these noodles, like I said, I should have rolled them out a little thinner. I was honestly just kind of in a hurry. I didn't want to spend a ton of time on this. And I even have a pasta cutter, which would have done the job much better, but I didn't want to get it out because we were having too much fun outside. So that's okay. We can just do home style noodles and no one complained because they're still chewy and delicious. So I'm just getting this meat out, cutting it up. I need to sharpen my knife because it looked like I was having to work hard to cut that up, and I certainly wasn't. It was plenty tender. I did oversear it a little bit, but and honestly just added more flavor, so it ended up being okay. But I just cut those pieces up. I popped it back in the oven just to kind of allow the pieces to soak up more of that juice while I was finishing up with my noodles, since I kind of broken them up. And you can see the noodles are pretty fat that. And I'm just putting them to the side. I normally do this in batches, but it didn't end up being too much to where I couldn't just do it in one batch and make sure they were bubbling up properly. So I just got that back out. I'm adding some sour cream just to add that creamy element. I wanted to thicken it as well. And so we mixed that in, and then I also added some half and half just to make sure it was more creamy and not as brothy. And it was definitely a concentrated flavor, which is what I'm going for because I don't want adding the sour cream and half and half to dilute it any, especially once I'm adding noodles. So just wanted plenty of flavor there. Also, here's a little trick for you. You can put your green onions in some water and just change out the water every few days. And these have been growing like crazy, and I have not had to buy green onions. And they were the perfect little fresh component to add. I did want to use some bread, some random bread that we had lying around. So you can see we keep it real classy around here. Bits and pieces, but we were happy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope I gave you some helpful tips, and we'll see you next time.